A steam distillation of peppermint. First, a decent amount of peppermint was picked. The best time would be right before the flowering season. Then the leaves were separated from the stems, because these have the highest content of oil. For the distillation they are cut roughly in smaller pieces and then added to a round bottom flask where a larger one would be better. In my case I only had a 500 milliliter flask, but a 1 or 2 liter flask would be better. Quite often a minimum of 5 liters is used. The amount of peppermint was 39 grams. Then the flask was filled up with water to 2/3 of its volume. Usually it is taken care of that the flask is just filled halfway in a steam distillation. Then a simple distillation was set up with a dripping funnel filled with distilled water on top, so water can be added later on and the distillation doesn't have to be interrupted. The oil bath was then heated until the water in the flask began to boil. The temperature of the oil bath was kept between 120 and 135 degrees C. After about 20 minutes the distillation began. At the beginning of the distillation it can be observed easily that a mixture of water and oil is condensing in the cooler. In the receiving flask both phases are collected. The steam is able to carry the oil or other steam volatile compounds into the condenser, so these can be distilled off too. The steam only has a temperature of 100 degrees C, so sensitive compounds which have a way higher boiling point can be distilled gently. An example is menthol, which is the main part of the peppermint oil and boils at 212 degrees C. Many of the other compounds in essential oils quite often decompose at lower temperatures, which is why they are very often obtained via a steam distillation. Due to the leaves not being cut too small, the steam can distribute evenly between them. When the oil bath becomes too hot, the foam can rise too much. By adding water and decreasing the temperature, it can be prevented from foaming over. After 2 hours, the distillation was stopped because the amount of oil in the distillate had decreased significantly. With this method, it usually has to be distilled twice the time or sometimes even for several days to get all of the oil. Then the mixture was added to a separatory funnel to separate the two phases. On separating off the water, it became obvious that only a very small amount of oil was obtained. This also has to do with a lot of the oil sticking to the walls of the flask and the funnel. In addition to that, some of the components are slightly soluble in water, which also decreases the yield. By adding a bit of water and using a graduated pipette, the amount of oil could be determined. .06 milliliters of oil were obtained, which corresponds to a yield of 0.14%. The oil content depends on the plant and harvest time and is between 2.5 and 5% according to the literature. That's why it can be assumed that the peppermint had to be distilled way longer. I will show a more effective variation of the steam distillation in another video. This was a steam distillation of peppermint. I hope you enjoyed. Please rate and comment. If you would like to see another method for a gentle way of distillation, take a look at the vacuum distillation of benzaldehyde or watch my latest video here.